Hey, team players, welcome back. Today's going to be an amazing day. We're going to be testing out a theory that we've been kicking around and want to see how it actually looks. And that theory is what happens instead of just doing a stack for a single team, you try to focus on as many in-game stacks as possible as you do with your standard DFS lineups to make it win. So today, we're going to target divisions and only draft from Pacific Division and see how awesome that can take. This is going to be an amazing draft, and let's see what happens. Bob, welcome. I'm like I said, I'm really excited for this notion as far as why we think this is a good idea and why we should explore it.
Yeah, I mean, so a couple of things to think about, right? Is that usually in a successful best ball lineup, you're usually wanting to have some correlation of some type. Is that if your stacks work out the way that you want them to, or the way that they're supposed to, you are going to have a nice correlation towards the end of the season. So when we think about it like this, and we all know that in a division, the teams will play each other twice. So it is very likely towards the back half of the season that these division games are taking place. And so in order to propel our way into the playoffs, usually we want, in a typical best ball mania, is to have some week 17 correlation. So looking at the schedule, looking at the games, we want to know, okay, week 17, let's say Detroit is playing Atlanta. Okay, that's a good game that we want to capture because those defenses might not be as good. And so we want to take all those offensive components, put them on a team, and hope we get to week 17 from other statistical advantages.
Well, and unfortunately, at this point, we don't know the schedule. Right. So we got to go off with the notion we do know. We know the division teams play each other.
Correct. We know the division teams play each other. We know what division teams are suspect. We know which teams are a little bit better. And so as we kick around this idea
let's hit up that notion, Bob, because I did a breakdown earlier today through week 17. So not the whole season, because week 18 doesn't matter. Which divisions as a unit score the most points? Because there is a direct correlation to scoring actual NFL points to fantasy production. Obviously, it's less on half PPR than full PPR, but you actually see it's directly there. And there are two divisions that go night and day ahead of the crowd and two divisions that go night and day below the crowd. And then there's four basically in the middle. So the two divisions that are dramatically worse than everyone else in terms of points for are probably the two easiest ones to project. The AFC South was the lowest scoring division of football last year through week 17. And the second lowest scoring division was the NFC West. The Niners didn't do much, and quite frankly, Arizona doesn't. The two best scoring divisions is the NFC North by a pretty big margin, followed by the AFC North, and then the herd of everyone else in the middle.
Yeah,
so
and
if we were going to do this with the best...
No, yeah, Joe, to that angle, though, I also want to bring up a very valid point as well, is that when we look at, for example, when we take a look at some of these AFC teams, right, that you said that the AFC is a lower score, AFC South specifically is a lower scoring division. That statement is absolutely true. But I also want to bring up also the notion that even when we consider these lower scoring outputs overall from a divisional standpoint, is that there are some games that you kind of want to take a little bit of an advantage of to some capacity, right? So, for example, I'm just going to use Houston's offense as an example, in that when we look at how they stack up versus their divisional opponents, because Tennessee isn't particularly adept at defending the pass, when you have a player like Nico Collins who could light that up in those games against Tennessee or in those games against potentially Indianapolis, that's something to also consider. So from a seasonal perspective, the AFC South might not have the teams that you want to invest in, but when they end up playing each other, because they don't have the ability to stop certain types of players or teams, it's something to be considered. And also something to be considered.
And on that note, the AFC South did let up the second most points last year. But when we're talking about the exercise of only going within one division, you want to go with the ones that put up the points themselves. This is why we do schedule for all you team players watching us for the first time. When we come out with our rankings, it is very schedule dependent and schedule heavy, because everything Bob says, there's matchups people can exploit. And if you can build a team where your players have natural valleys because they're playing a hard matchup with someone who has a great peak that week, that's how you dominate a best ball league. And that's why all of our rankings are so dependent upon the schedule. And it's quite frankly harder for us this time of the year. But this exercise of just taking people solely from one division, I think it's going to be dramatically hard, and I think it's going to be fun. So I'm excited to do that. We're going to the 10th pick in this draft as it's loading up here, Bob.
All right, I like that. Just as an example here. Go ahead.
Like, we could get a Ma at 10, but who are we going to get in the second round?
Yeah, it's definitely a...
it could be true.
That's why I'm suggesting that, maybe you don't hyper do the division, but you keep that in mind as you are compartmentalizing your lineup, as you're working your way down through your lineup. So, for example, if we've indicated that the NFC North and the NFC or in the AFC North are two divisions that we want to target, taking Amon at the 10 hole and then taking Derrick Henry on the turn would secure us two of the divisional components that we would need.
Well, I was thinking trying to condense all of it in the one division.
I don't think it's possible to condense everything into one division, depending on...
Part of what I want to find out.
But like looking at spot 10, if you're going to... What happened there?
Dude,
if you're going to do
technical difficulties on this side of the fence, guys.
Yeah. If you're going to do that there and you want to go NFC North, then you'd have to take Josh Jacobs
on the comeback.
If that's what you wanted to do. If you wanted to have that divisional correlation, then you would have to do that, and then you'd probably have to take DJ Moore the next round, and then JMO the round after that.
Yeah, that's super not the second round pick is a little spicy there. Maybe we treat
again.
Like
that's why I'm saying that if you can do this, you can do the division by making a stack that makes sense. So if this pick is Amon-Ra, we don't necessarily have to go into that, but just understand that we're not then building all of the components of that division. We're just building some of the components. But if you want to
I would be okay with Amon-Ra than Genty. And just have and basically try to do maybe 12 of the picks from that division instead of forcing the concept.
But I'm also sharing something like this too, is that let's say you look at the NFC South, for example. We're going to get boxed out of a couple of players from that division as well. But we've already kind of pinpointed that division is going to have some components that we like. So maybe at this pick, maybe you take Bucky in the second round and Nico in the first round, and then you tackle the AFC South.
I'm thinking maybe AFC North and go Genty and then Henry.
You could do something like that.
That's what I'm thinking.
Taking a double running back.
Let's try to do the AFC North for this one. It was the second best division. So that's the other part. Like we got to let the draft talk to us. I think realistically speaking, the best way if you're going to do the NFC is when you start with J. Jeffrey Gibbs, because then you can catch a reasonable NFC guy, again, Jacobs, at the end of the second round.
Right. That's why I said it
Jacobs here in the beginning of the second just feels wrong.
That's why I said it really depends upon the draft status or the draft position that you have, and the what division you want to go. Like, the correlation is good. There are pieces that we could take from other divisions to build divisional correlation there as well. Because also, to think about it, the NFC North, the Baltimore has a good defense. The other three,
well, they don't when they play Cincinnati, though, and they really don't when they play Pittsburgh either.
The Browns have a decent defense as well. So you're only worried. The only two defenses that aren't any good realistically are the Steelers and the Bengals. So thinking about it from that perspective as well is really important, is thinking about, okay, the likelihood that they play one of these two teams at the back half of the season is probably pretty high. And so what is that going to look like? It's one of the reasons why I'm also not shying away so much from the NFC.
Bob, Henry went. We're kind of like got to figure this out quick.
Again, NFC South, I'm willing to go into. You said you don't want to go AFC South. I'm okay. NFC South.
I think it has to be H. Shane or JT.
Or if you think Genty's going to Denver, we can go Brock Bowers here.
Okay, let's go West. All right. AFC West.
It opens up the door to
this
also.
By the way, this also wanted me to do something that we were tossing around as another idea, something we never do, which is the tight end early team. So we're combining two questions here: tight end early and AFC West stacking.
So if you're just tuning in, we are talking about divisional correlation as we get through the season, because we don't know the schedule, but we do know that divisional teams are going to play each other 2 times a year. So we want to kind of bake that into what we're thinking about right now. Now, this is actually okay, because this opens the pathway to a couple different builds.
It opens the Kansas City receivers.
It opens up Worthy. It opens up Rice. We don't have to worry about tight end now. So if we wanted to tackle Warren round 9, we could. But we don't have to.
It also takes us out of the other rookie running backs for the spirit of the drill.
For the spirit, I mean, we could take Hampton. We absolutely could if we think that Hampton had a better chance to go to Denver.
I mean, yeah, we could. You're right, because Hampton could. Denver's getting either Hampton or Genty. I think that's pretty safe to say, right?
And Las Vegas could get Genty or Hampton as well. So I think if we come back in the 3rd round and budget for Worthy or Rice, and then take Omarion in the 4th round, I would be happy with that, because we can figure out, because most of these AFC West wide receivers come a little bit later.
They do.
The Jacoby, your Jacoby, your Cortland Sutton, your Mims.
So can I just, because we're on the AFC West, and I just went through all the fantasy relevant players. I'm going to put them here on the queue.
Of course, we're going to divert a little bit and take non-AFC West guys as well, because there's only.
I want to see if we can do without doing that. I really do.
There's only so many on this. There's only so many. You can't do. There's 20 rounds. There's only so many. There's like, when you think about 20 fantasy relevant players from the AFC West, that's going to be hard to do.
This whole thing's hard to do. But one of the things just putting them through this is, not too many people are talking about how much Vegas needs to get a running back. Right now, their starting running back is Mostert.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why I'm saying they might draft one.
Yeah, so I think they will draft one. So I think putting Omari and Hampton is not cheating the drill.
I don't think it is either. I mean, when you look at the Raiders, I'm just going to pull up Raiders NFL draft predictions here, and let's see what a couple other people are.
They have a lot of needs.
So, mock draft tracker, post free agency. It is the Raiders' official website on NFL.com is saying that Daniel Jeremiah thinks that they're going to take Genty. Kuiper thinks they're going to take Genty. Renner thinks they're going to take Genty.
I'm good with that. We got Genty.
Stackpool thinks Genty. Costco thinks Tetero McMillan. Then we have some offensive line. Man. The 33rd team's James Foster thinks Genty. Nate Tice thinks Shadur.
Shadur would make sense.
Shadur,
Don't like it.
Tetaroa.
We're not drafting Shadur, by the way, no matter how much we're trying to do this. So, Bob,
hey, you want to buy the dip on a player. You can buy the dip real hard on Shadur. He's going real late.
He shouldn't be drafted. People are finally waking up to that he's only being talked about because his last name's Sanders. But this first pick will be Worthy if he's still here. Again, not cheating the drill, going with Worthy. And then I think Omarion Hampton will be the second pick.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think Omarion cheats the drill at all. There's
I think he's Denver.
There's conversation that that he could go to the Steelers at some point. I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think he'll be on the board at 21.
Let me look.
One thing this does mean, everybody, we will not be drafting Tyler Warren today.
Hey, that's a big thing.
We're growing up here. We're getting out of our comfy blanket.
So I don't see them drafting. I don't see Denver drafting a tight end now because they went out and got
no, they're not.
Ingram.
I think actually, quite frankly, Ingram is a number 2 tight end on this team. I think
logistically, like there are people that are saying they're going to take Bo Nix, Emeka Egbuka, Colston Loveland. A couple of people think Genty as well. So Genty could go to one of those two teams. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, Genty's certainly not getting past Dallas. I think Omarion Hampton is his last exit point is down. I don't think he's going past Denver. So,
I don't think Denver.
These rookies end up in the AFC West here, and
Denver's running backs really underperformed last year. They already got rid of Javonte Williams, and I don't think that you can pass up. I mean, they need a lot of help too in certain other areas, but I don't think that I would want to pass up. This also is the longest that a quarterback has been left for the first pick on the board.
Yeah.
Rarely have we seen Josh Allen recently being drop down to the end of the third round. So if you're just tuning in, what we're talking about today is divisional correlation, and we're drafting a team based off of divisional correlation. We're making the assumption that Genty and Omarion Hampton end in the AFC West. So we are having a bit more correlation to the AFC West, knowing that the offenses there can put up points and the defenses overall
the AFC West was right in the middle of the herd in terms of points for.
Yeah, and this also, we didn't get Ladd, but it does open the door to the Chargers as well.
It does. So I mean, the fact is we got we got Bowers, which might argue.
We rarely take Bowers
in the division.
Yeah, and we rarely take Bowers. And just
never.
Just to clarify, Terrence, do you mean that Omarion could be the new Javonte Williams for them, as in being successful, or do you think that he's going to end up as kind of the injury prone, all that other stuff that happened to Javonte? Because Javonte could have been really good.
Had he not gotten hurt.
Then he got hammered by injuries. Everything that I've been reading and seeing is that Omarion's going to be decently productive depending on what team he lands on.
Yeah, he's more of a balanced running back. He's not a
Matthew Stafford there,
like Henderson or Tootin. But no, I said I like his game.
Do you see that Stafford pick? Way early to get that stack on Stafford. That person's been watching a lot of podcasts, trying to go early so that he doesn't get swiped. Little weird.
I think that's way too early. I think he got away with that 2 rounds from now.
I'm very curious where Rashee Rice ends up landing.
I mean, if he comes back to us, I'm taking him, no doubt.
If he comes back to us, then I think you have to dictate yourself into Patrick Mahomes if you're not going to want to go Bo Nix.
Yeah, that might be fair. But let's see if Rishi comes.
But I am curious
I'm probably going Sutton Henderson, though, on the next
I have seen Sutton come back to this point. And while it does make a kind of a weakish wide receiver room, Xavier Worthy is an explosive player. If Rashee Rice is back, he should continue to work in an explosive way. Sutton is a reliable threat. If we get Sutton, we could end up building Bo Nix and Mims as well for a nice little double dip.
I think we were going to plan on doing that.
It also opens the door. It also opens the door for like a 10th, 11th round Evan Ingram, depending on where Evan Ingram lands.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
gives us two very solid options at tight end. I'm very curious if Rashee Rice ends up going. I'm also very
What is this
interested.
guy in the one hole doing?
He didn't take Joe Burrow, and I have been seeing a lot more that most people aren't going to take him.
We were ahead of the trend. We did that a month ago. The only time we ever had the first pick on one of our recordings.
Yeah, Terrence, that's what I was asking, because when he came in, he had attributes to be explosive. It wasn't that he was a phenomenal fantasy player by any means, but he had the attributes to be explosive. But I do want to touch on what you wrote here. Fantasy wish casted. There's a lot of players, us included in this Omarion Hampton, is that we are wish casting a little bit on Omarion Hampton. We do want Omarion Hampton to
landing
be
spots.
successful. And I think it's interesting recently, Terrence, that we as a fantasy being as people
go before Rice,
as people that have been doing fantasy football, we have been also a lot of this happened last year with a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. was wish casted as you stated here.
Mm-hmm.
He great in college, legendary kind of college resume. But when you look at the situation that he got drafted in, a lot of people were putting him at number 1 or in the first round. And that was way high. And I think that as we push rookies further up the board, that I think that there is just an attribute of wish casting that's involved. I see that Rashee Rice just went and
Sutton went. So I kind of think I want to go Henderson here and just be done at running back. Maybe throw in a late Najee.
Okay, we could take Henderson here. Who do we take as the wide receiver in the next one? We could take Myers.
No, it's way too early for Myers.
No, I'm saying we can take Myers at some point. Which quarterback do we want? Do we want Mahomes? We could take Mahomes after the turn.
We could do Henderson, Mahomes, and then do Bo Nix on the turn and have those be the two quarterbacks.
Okay, I'm okay with something like that.
Late Geno or Herbert.
I'm okay with something like that. We do have to start.
I don't think either of the two guys past us will take Mahomes on this turn because they just took two studs.
Yeah, but back to a guy like Javonte. I was reading a couple of articles recently, and we're going
to have to hit receiver hard at the end, Bob.
Yeah, there was an interesting as we talked about on the show a couple weeks back, is that the predictors for success in the NFL, that there is a very big predictor that is clumped up into where your draft capital is at for fantasy production.
Mm-hmm.
And rarely in the last 10 years have we seen running backs drafted, let's say in the 5th round or later, have successful fantasy seasons. There's always outliers like Jordan Howard and players like that. There's always outliers. There's some undrafted free agents, etc. Kyron Williams was a part of this as well. But typically speaking, if you're investing a high draft capital, there is reason to believe, especially at the running back position, that they plan to use you at a significant advantage, because more so than before in the NFL history is that most teams don't want to pay running backs because the shelf life for a running back seems to be a little bit more tight than other positions. Mm-hmm. I'd say cornerback is a little bit tighter as well. But when you look at running back overall and you look at the shelf life, is that there are teams that sign their rookie running backs to an extended contract after the rookie value went through. But that's only when they've invested a high draft capital and that running back has turned out. If they didn't invest a high draft capital and he turns out, yeah, he's probably going to get a second contract. If they didn't invest a high draft capital. So there's a lot of things to think about when it goes to that. But when we look at a guy like, for every player that's a success, you're going to have two players that aren't. That's kind of just like the way it goes. And so when you look back at draft, I'll go back to 2022 because I think there was a couple of good running backs drafted in 2022 as we go through this draft here, NFL draft. And we'll just say some of the say some of the players that were drafted at the running back position there. Only 22 running backs were selected in that draft.
That's
22.
a pretty healthy amount. That's 2/3 of the rosters.
So 22 were drafted. And when you look at the running backs that were drafted in the first couple of rounds, right? So,
which is all we're looking at here. We're not looking at really anyone past the third round for total draft.
The first running back taken that year was taken in the second round. That was Breece Hall. Then you had Kenny Walker, who has glimpses of studliness.
He does. That's a good. I like how you said that. Studliness. Good word.
Then you have James Cook, who can be a stud when he's used.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had Rachaad White in the third round, who's clearly he had a good season, I believe, the first year. Clearly not a stud.
Weakness of the group.
Then Tyrion Davis-Price, who?
Yeah, the point is, once you get into the third and past the third round, there's no guarantee of anything.
You're looking at some compensatory picks, I believe. Brian Robinson Jr. was drafted there. Then the fourth round, Dameon Pierce, Zamir White, Isaiah Spiller, Pierre Strong, Hassan Haskins.
Yeah, these are backups and third down backs at best.
Tyler Algier, Jerome Ford, Snoop Connor. So,
which is a testament to all these guys who are going to go in the first and second round. I mean, there's going to be 5 running backs to go before the end of the second round this year.
If you're going in the first or second round, especially considering that most teams more recently don't.
Najee going early.
This is the point that I wanted to bring up, Joe, is that most teams nowadays aren't willing to invest first or second round draft capital in it, in a running back. And I see that. I totally get your point there, Terrence. I feel as you feel when it comes to Genty, is that Genty showed a really high level of production at when playing at various amounts of time during the season. You know, the game against Penn State, he had a couple of runs where he was able to get loose and stuff, but he was bottled up a couple, a decent amount of that game. And the cost of Omarion Hampton, when we think about it from a roster construction standpoint, I totally get it. So, like, if I can take Devontae Adams, or I can take a shot at like Zay, or maybe I'm taking Jaden Daniels or Lamar, does that make my team stronger than taking Omarion? Probably. And
I just look at I'm looking at this, Bob.
Let me finish my thought though, Joe. Right. I am less likely to take Omarion Hampton there in the fourth round if I already have a really maybe 2 running backs by that point in time. Maybe it's Derrick Henry and Achane. Then I'm probably not investing in Omarion Hampton there. I think that Trevion Henderson, out of all these rookie backs that we've been drafting recently, I think Trevion Henderson's value has me really interested. And I think that Keldon Johnson's value actually has me the most interested.
All right, Bob. So Jacoby just went there. We had to get a receiver outside of this, so we got to get a good receiver. I want to go Ayuk or Golden. I think Golden might be the first receiver taken in the draft.
All right, that's fine. I mean, we're going to go out of the division, and I'm cool with that.
Yeah, we have to. I mean, not every pick's going to be division.
It would have been nice to have Jacoby there.
It would have been very nice to have Jacoby. I thought he was making it back to us.
I mean, I love Trevion. Trevion Henderson is absolutely – we talked a couple weeks ago about explosion. You talk about explosive with the ball in his hands. Trevion Henderson has elite level talent at that level. There goes Caleb Johnson.
When did Cooper Kupp go to Seattle?
Cooper Kupp went to Seattle last week, dude.
I missed that. My bad.
Yeah. I mean, remember when we were talking about where JSN's value is? And we were like, who else is getting the ball there? Well, they ended up getting Cooper Kupp and Marquise Valdez-Scantling.
Well, Valdez-Scantling is 100% a zero.
Well, he's a field stretcher. I mean, he's down there to maybe play decoy, maybe catch 2 or 3 balls in a game. I mean, that's what he did with the Saints, and he can do that fairly well if he's given the chance.
All right, Bob, I'm going to push for Ayuk if he's on the board here. Your other choices are Mooney, Shaheed, and Pittman.
I mean, I think Ayuk has a good chance to be successful later on in the season, maybe not at the beginning of the season. I mean, again, this team is a testament
on the next pick.
this team is a testament to the struggles that you would have if you take yourself through the lens of just one division.
The receiver pool got thin quick.
The receiver pool gets thin quick if you're not targeting like guys like Ladd or guys like if you don't have the opportunity to get Worthy and Rice. Maybe instead of Omarion there, maybe we should have went with Rice to give us a little bit more oomph in the wide receiver room. But I really did think that Rice would have lasted a couple more picks to us.
Did.
And Cortland Sutton usually lasts that.
Yeah, Cortland Sutton is the one who came off the board. We're not normally used to.
Not getting Sutton there was a bit of a heartbreaker there. Emeka Egbuka would have been an interesting pick there as well. I think profile wise, when we think about fantasy points towards the end of the season, even if Ayuk, the Niners just paid Ayuk a boatload of money and he ended up getting hurt. Now, the odds that he's worked back into the season very quickly, I'm not sure are very high, but the potential for a good payoff later on in the season is one of the reasons why you should like Brandon Ayuk. Having him as our third wide receiver, that hurts. But if he's your fourth wide receiver, it doesn't hurt as much because when we're looking at back end payoff towards the end of the season, he's right there. He's absolutely right there for you to have that potential breakout, right?
So Bob, the ideal fit is here.
I'm interested. I know we were going heavy AFC West to start with some correlation there, but now that you've introduced NFC
West, an 8th round without me doing it.
Now, if we introduce ourselves some NFC West, can we start talking a little bit in that direction as well?
Well, I kind of want to see if we can still ride this because I like Mims. If we get Mims at Hollywood on the turn here, I think that's pretty successful.
I don't want Hollywood, but I see where you're going with that.
Well, see, the reason I'm into Hollywood is
that's an early Hollywood. You said Myers was early. That's a way early Hollywood Brown.
Oh, sorry, I skipped. I did mess that up. It would be Mims and an off pick, and then Hollywood.
Okay. I didn't see Bo Nix went at the end of that.
The guy who took Bo Nix before.
I didn't see Bo Nix went like that. Bo, I know you hate Bo.
I do.
But I'm willing to. I think that Bo at that cost is right around where he should be. The fact that Baker went after Bo has been really interesting to me to watch over the last couple of drafts that we've done. Depending on what players are being taken, like an unstacked Baker Mayfield to me doesn't make much sense.
He did take minutes. So that guy's doing a Denver stack over there.
He's doing that mini
Denver. That guy might be doing what we're doing here, Bob.
Oh, we could have taken Pacheco too.
There's no way I'll ever put Pacheco on this roster.
We had it. It was there. There's no guarantee.
Because Pacheco's not going to be a starter. The 3 rookies I took will be starters.
I dislike Pacheco. I 100% dislike Pacheco in this year's draft. But I will say, and I'm really interested to see, with a year removed from his injury, how they utilize him. It intrigues me at the very minimum.
So, Bob, I want to talk about someone else who's intriguing to me, but no one else is on this bus.
QJ's got to land on this team somewhere, right?
A corollary to him first. We see the removal of Debo be a great opportunity for Parasol.
Oh, Parasol, yeah.
Parasol did nothing as a rookie.
Whoa. The 2 games that he ended up playing in, he was rather successful. Like the 2 games where he was featured, he was rather successful.
My point being, a guy who got drafted before him, who has better traits, we should also expect to step up with a better quarterback. And it's a direction that you cringe every time I say his name. But he's 6'4",
he
has decent hands, and an infinitely better quarterback.
Who?
Coleman.
God, dude,
I think Coleman's poised. I look at Buffalo. They need someone to step up who is a dude.
Okay.
I think Coleman is that guy. he has all of the traits of it. And now that he has a year under the system, I think there's a strong possibility he ends up being a stud.
Okay, I don't necessarily disagree with you that. Okay, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you that Coleman is the guy there.
I also know he's not making the turn past the Josh Allen.
I do want to know where
it's going to be this pick.
I do want to know where QJ is, and I do want to know where Hollywood is.
So Hollywood, we'd be able to. Hollywood would have to be the second pick in the 10th round.
What about QJ? Where's he at?
We probably got to choose between the two of them, but I would rather go Hollywood for the same argument essentially as Coleman is. Those aren't simplistic offenses, and they normally take a year to learn.
Yeah, but
he was hurt most of the year, and I want to see what he does with a full year. I think Hollywood could be a dude, especially with Reese out.
If he's out,
he is. No, Reese is right. Correction. Rice is injured for the first 6 weeks of the year, regardless.
We'll see, because he also has that suspension lingering as well.
The question is, do they overlap? But that's more.
What I'm just curious about in terms of ADP, when we're looking at the big board in total, this is within the 2 rounds that.
So if you're talking active ADP, this pick would be Coleman because he's not coming back to us, and then Hollywood ADP is 126 and QJ's is 137. Which would give us a chance. 130 is the follow-up pick on the end.
If you want Coleman, take Coleman. Then Coleman. If you want Coleman, take Coleman. I don't particularly like the draft capital investment in Coleman here. I would be
ADP, dude.
I get it. I understand that. But where I'm at on Coleman is that I'd invest in Coleman probably if he was sitting around there in the 11th round. I know he won't be sitting around there in the 11th round, but I am intrigued by him for the fact that when we look at his usage.
Hey, can I call time out here real quick just for our turn pick? Then we get back on Coleman.
Yeah.
With there only being one quarterback left in the division, being Geno Smith, we're clearly going to take one outside the division. What do you think of Fields being this pick so he can run for his life?
I'd rather have the wide receiver because we only have 4.
All right, so Hollywood it is then. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, it stacks with Mahomes, so that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd rather have the wide receiver there. I know we're buying in early on Hollywood, and Hollywood's not a particularly elite level player right now. So I get where your production idea is out of Fields, but if Patrick Mahomes is successful, it's going to go through the hands of these offensive weapons in terms of the wide receiver market, I think.
I agree with that because they have no running.
We can also take a back end. We can also take a back end Noah Gray as well in terms of the tight end market. If you don't want to take a guy like Evan Ingram or anything.
Well, if Ingram's here on the comeback, I'd rather have him than QJ, to be totally blunt.
I mean, Ingram and QJ could be interesting. I mean, we need to fill out the roster.
QJ, quite frankly, could be the turn. We could make it happen.
Yeah, we need to fill out with rosters. But back to Coleman is last year. I had a lot of high hopes for Keon Coleman. When we were talking about Xavier Worthy and Keon Coleman, I thought that both of them had the potential to be really successful moving forward in the season itself. But one of the things about Coleman that was a little bit less exciting for fantasy purposes was just his generalized usage. Is that in terms of how Buffalo played the game, Buffalo was winning games without needing to pass the ball to Keon Coleman consistently.
Buffalo also had one of the easiest schedules last year.
There was a time where you could see Keon Coleman, like you said here, Terrence, where you could see him go 1 catch, 25 yards and a touchdown, and we were not seeing him again. We don't see him on the stat sheet again. He was still playing football out there, blocking and doing all that stuff, but he wasn't doing the fantasy aspect of it. Yep. Now, the guy is a decent vertical threat. I mean, he is a good player. But I think that a lot of times when it comes to a guy like Keon Coleman and rookies and learning the system, that Joe has a point in making is that, when you have complicated systems or you come from a system that's not complicated into one that has more, it can take some time to learn. But I would say if I'm in a redraft league and Keon Coleman is sitting there, and I see in best ball that, people are taking Keon Coleman in the 9th, I'm holding out. I'm waiting until Keon Coleman probably drops a couple more rounds for the fact that I just don't trust his usage. Like in best ball, when it comes to it, he could be like a Gabe Davis, like you said there, Terrence. And that's good to a degree, especially in a best ball format.
But I just don't trust he's going to fall. I think the magnet of the Allen owner keeps him from falling. Just like how Burrow kept going up because you got Chase so early.
I see that. But again, how I feel about Buffalo and one of the
end is killing me. Terrence, is that you as the first picker in this draft?
One of the reasons why I'm not like staunchly on any Buffalo wide receiver in particular is that I feel that I genuinely feel that Khalil Shakir is a better option in PPR, and I think most people would feel that way. Mm-hmm. His usage is never. It's not Terrence. His usage is good, but he's not being used in that critical spot of red zone. I want a wide receiver that's capable of getting to the red zone and scoring. And Khalil Shakir is not that guy for Josh Allen. But Keon Coleman could turn into that guy. So I see where you're going with Coleman. And his value in comparison to Khalil Shakir 2 rounds later, this is about the point where we were probably drafting Keon Coleman last year as well. So he hasn't really moved much. I just don't want to invest so much in a guy like Keon Coleman.
The difference between this year and last year, if you remember last year, it was almost like how the Niners receivers are, where they were basically all 3 in a row. That was how Buffalo was last year.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, Terrence, that you just mentioned that there goes Evan Ingram.
So this is going to be my boy Tootin and then QJ.
Okay, I'm okay with that. It's not an impressive wide receiver room, but if the AFC West does happen to hit, we do have.
They have an easy schedule. If you look at them,
components. The wide receiver room is mainly not AFC West, so that's interesting.
Oh no, that's not true. We have 2 Kansas City guys,
and that's it. That's it.
So far, that's it. We're about to take QJ.
So, I mean, the strategy, the correlation, you don't want to force the correlation, but if the correlation naturally works out, you can benefit. In this episode, guys, what we were talking about is correlation, particularly in divisional correlation, because we know that those divisional matchups, when they occur towards the end of the year, different divisions play different ways, different styles, and we want to pinpoint divisions. Okay, this division could potentially score a high amount of points against their divisional opponent. We took Genty as the first pick, assuming that he's either going to go to Denver or Las Vegas. Coming back around, Ladd wasn't there, so we ended up taking Brock Bowers, and then we went from there, assuming that Omarion Hampton or Travion Henderson, one of those guys might also end up on one of the teams that we mentioned as well.
Be specific, Denver.
Den Mahomes. We wanted Jacoby Myers. We wanted Cortland Sutton. That didn't materialize. They never made it back to us, so we took Travion and all that stuff.
Although I got to just say, if Henderson goes to Kansas City, that would be scary. But there's no way Kansas City is not going offensive linemen.
They need offensive line. They need a lot of offensive line help.
Oh yeah, they need 7 of them.
But to this point, too, Terrence, if I am drafting, let's say I'm drafting only like a couple of best ball teams, or I want to be vested in my redraft league. Usually in a redraft league, if I'm drafting for redraft purposes and it's not best ball and I'm not drafting.
Oh, you taking QJ for?
I told you to take QJ first. You didn't believe me.
I love Tootin too much.
Yeah, but you have 4 rookie running backs. The likelihood that I just disagree with that mentality.
I'd rather have the rookie running backs than the rookie receivers.
We need a receiver. I mean, we needed a receiver. We needed a receiver.
It, but we're taking Dobbs.
That's a terrible pick. I think you just picked 2 of the worst picks you've ever picked.
What, Tootin and Dobbs?
Yes.
Dobbs is not a horrible pick, dude.
I think both of them are I think both I think both at value right now. Tootin has climbed too high for what he could potentially, what his role could potentially be for a team year one.
That part might start becoming true because if he goes in the late third round,
too high.
That's fair. I'm still enamored by his speed, though.
Yeah, but when you look at our build, QJ would have been
running backs. I ain't fighting that.
No, what I'm saying is QJ would have been a better value for us because looking at our wide receivers, we have wide receivers that can conk out at 0, and we need another one that has the potential to put up 20 points. Romeo Doubs is not that guy, and he will never be that guy.
Well, Dobbs can conk out at 0. He can still do that.
What?
I said Dobbs can still conk out at 0.
That's what I'm saying. He is more likely a 0 than a 10.
I will give you that. Oh, I don't know about that. I do think
and
that
he is
I think Dobbs going to emerge as the number 1 out there.
He is definitely, for me, closer to a 0 than he is a 25, which QJ can put up.
Yeah, but I actually think Mike Williams is going to take a big chunk of QJ's production.
I mean, you can feel that way, but you could have drafted both.
I can still draft Mike Williams at the very end.
Yeah, but that does nothing because you drafted Dobbs. Dobbs is useless. I'm gonna say this like 70 times this season. I am not drafting and I'm not getting involved in that Green Bay nonsense like I did last year. Having the assets from Green Bay outside of Josh Jacobs last year was a recipe for absolute panic and disaster on a week-to-week basis. Because
disaster.
Jordan Love was not throwing the ball at a consistently high mark to benefit any of those wide receivers in a fantasy discussion. Any. Like he might get you there a couple of times, which is what I guess we're asking for. But is he ever going to have I just feel like prioritizing Tootin when you already had 3 rookies, when you could have had, I'd have been okay with QJ and then Dobbs, but prioritizing Tootin when we don't even have a full grasp of his current draft. Like as you stated a couple of weeks back before the NFL Combine, you said, I'm going to take Tootin every chance I get in the 17th, 18th, 19th.
I was getting him too cheap.
Then everybody started talking about him, and now he's in the 11th.
Because he went off in the Combine.
What is that? 11th round?
Yeah, all right. Kidding me? Bob, I'm now accepting the 13th round as the speed limit for Tootin. And he might, until we see he gets drafted before pick 90, that's the answer then. Pick 90 is the line in the sand.
All right, who you taking here?
Anthony Richardson, because I need a running quarterback.
No.
Dude, there are no quarterbacks left.
I don't care. I don't care.
There's only one who's on
start. You took 3 players that suck in a row.
All right, and then it's Cam Ward then.
What?
It's Cam Ward then.
Sure, at least he's going to have a job.
Fair enough.
At least he's going to have a position that you can't, they have to start him. If you're giving him number 1 pick, yeah, they have to start him.
And Geno will be the other pick.
Oh, my Lord. My land.
That's for the division thing. That's getting back on route.
I am there with you, but I am okay. Like I've said on the show a couple of times, I am okay with a guy like Anthony Richardson if the build makes sense. But what I'm not okay with,
without having Warren, I don't know if the build makes sense.
What I'm saying is I'm not okay with having 3 irrelevant players drafted in the 3 rounds in a row. Dobbs less so.
That's what this part of the draft becomes, Bob.
But Tootin, Dobbs, and then you would want to take Anthony Richardson. I mean, come on. That would walk you into almost 0 potential.
Well, the legs of Richardson are enticing.
What's up, family? Yeah, the legs are enticing, but not when they're sitting on the bench for Daniel Jones. I'm not saying Daniel Jones is going to start, but again,
hard to fight that.
Let somebody else eat that bullet, because again, think of it like this, Joe. Anthony Richardson, for Anthony Richardson to be a successful fantasy quarterback and outscore Patrick Mahomes on a week-to-week basis, he is going to need to rush for 50-plus yards, rush for a touchdown, pass for 200 yards, and pass for a touchdown or two. The likelihood that that happens is so low.
I'm with you, Bob.
So low. I mean, if I'm building, here's where I would take Anthony Richardson. If I built, and like I said, I'm not going to do this, but if I built Jordan Love, yeah, I'd build in an Anthony Richardson, give me a little bit of upswing potential there. But there isn't necessarily an upswing where maybe it's just smoke and mirrors. Maybe it really is just smoke and mirrors, and he's not going to lose his job. But the fact that I
think they're going to go all the way not to have him lose his job.
But the fact that he needs Daniel Jones as competition, that's disgusting. That's really gross.
I think the best thing for Indy is they turn him into a wide receiver, to be blunt. But
I am in a school that is underneath a church. So we have our stained glass windows in the background. Some of them are they don't open up very well. But yeah, outside is the main street right there. Yeah, we were just talking about Coleman family. If you can get that deal done, it's fair. You're giving up fair value to get into a guy like Coleman. We talked about the benefits and the pros and cons to Keon Coleman. He has a pathway to success. When you look at the other wide receivers in the same kind of conversation, Travis Hunter, Keenan Allen, Michael Pittman, Hollywood Brown, Christian Kirk, the assumed risk of Keon Coleman and Travis Hunter is probably a little bit more exciting for people than a Hollywood Brown or a Christian Kirk. Again, we said that we wouldn't draft Christian Kirk when he was a part of the Jaguars, but if I'm building CJ Stroud or anything like that, I'm more likely to build Christian Kirk. He's also a year off that injury. Michael Pittman is an interesting player, but again, if he's tied to Anthony Richardson, as we said about Josh Downs, I like Josh Downs, but it's hard to go. And I've drafted a whole team of Indianapolis before. I put a bunch of Indy guys. I built an Indy stack with another correlated team from the division, I believe. But the cojones that you have to take to build in Michael Pittman after having those back issues. And as a person with back issues, I know that they aren't going away either way you dice it even when you look at medical care. So when you look at a guy like Josh Downs over Michael Pittman, is the value there? And then again, Keenan Allen's not even on a team yet. So, will the Bears re-sign him? Will he end up going to the Chargers and get reunited with Herbert? The receivers in that round are really rough. I mean, they are rough around the edges. And there's a lot of conversation that when you look at this board, Joe, the fact of the matter is that from round 9 to 11, there was only 8 wide receivers drafted.
Yeah.
So that tells you that middle stretch of players is, let's face it, you might not want to be drafting wide receiver in this zone if you really like having competitive wide receivers. But there's a decent amount of value here in guys like Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Ayuk, Darnell Mooney. Again, Keon Coleman has a little bit of value there. Evan Ingram, we were targeting Evan Ingram, but he ended up going in the 11th round.
Bob, I'm probably going to go with the iOS on this pick.
126.
For all the reasons I like the Coleman stepping up in his second year, I understand that the Cincinnati room is packed. I also know how often Higgins and
get
hurt.
Here's the thing about the Cincinnati room is that, yes, the Cincinnati room is packed, but if Joe Burrow's throwing the ball 40 times,
it doesn't matter.
20 of them are going to Jamar Chase. 10 of them are going to T. Higgins. 5 of them are going to Gesicki. Sure. 5 of them are probably going to go to Yoshivas.
And for the 15th round pick, that's a win.
We do need another tight end. Only have Brock Bowers.
Yeah, I'm thinking we'll throw Chig and Disley on this roster at the end.
Disley doesn't have any value. They might even pick up somebody else.
Noah
right. Gray.
Noah Gray. We can look at a tight end here. That's fine.
Noah Gray is who we would want.
Brandon Strange and Freiermuth are the two that stand out to me.
Yeah, I mean, we could wait on Noah Gray a little bit later. I mean, taking Brock Bowers in the second round, we're predicating that no other tight end that we could possibly get without.
If you'd rather me take Noah Gray than Disley, I mean, they're basically the same ADP.
Yeah, I'd rather Noah Gray on this team, but not at this pick, but I'd rather Noah Gray on this team.
This pick is, basically the way I look at it is pick the rookie of your choice, and I'm bigger on Damian Martinez.
Yeah, Terrence, to this end, you were with us last.
Hey, what do you think about Troy Franklin here, Bob? He was a second round receiver last year. Going with the theme.
I like Troy. Receiver. I'm willing to invest in Troy.
Keeps with our AFC West logic.
Yeah, it keeps with that AFC West build
that we were going for in this show.
On a team that should score a decent amount. Cedric Tillman is an interesting player. We touched on Cedric Tillman a little while ago. And I think that the Jameis Winston effect hit our mindsets really hard with Cleveland. So Jameis Winston, and this is the Joe Burrow effect for Cincinnati, right? If Joe Burrow's not throwing the ball 40 times a game, having Chase and Higgins makes it a little less valuable. And with Winston was throwing the ball, what was it? I think 45 times.
Mm-hmm.
And Njoku was getting 12 targets when Tillman went down. Judy was getting 14 targets when Tillman was down. And when Tillman was in, Tillman is a really interesting player. When you're looking at Tillman's draft value right now, Tillman down here in the 14th round, pick 160. I think that even if you don't want to build anything that has to do with Cleveland at all, that Cedric Tillman is probably going to be good value, really good value in this round, considering what you said earlier, Terrence, about not only is Judy fragile from a health perspective, but from a mental health perspective
yes, he is.
As well. And there has been conversation or talks that maybe they go out and bring in Russell Wilson and whatnot. And Russell Wilson basically just was like, hey, I'm not even going to throw Jerry Jeudy the ball. That's not even my thing. I don't really like doing that. Jerry Jeudy's a good enough wide receiver. We talked about Jerry Jeudy 2 years ago, and he was one of our guys that we were like, oh, he could really step up if given the opportunity. He never got enough opportunity to do that. But for Cleveland to be successful, their running game has been anemic with Chubb going down with that catastrophic injury and Jerome Ford being just okay. That their defense is good enough for them to
I don't see a way they don't take Carter, though.
Their defense is good enough to have a successful offense. If they find the right quarterback, I think Cedric Tillman,
baby.
I think Cedric Tillman is a great value. Now, if they start Kenny Pickett, I don't want any of those wide receivers.
They're going to be starting Kenny Pickett.
If they start Kenny Pickett, I don't want any wide receivers. But I will say that I would rather take Cedric Tillman down here in the 14th round than where did Jerry Jeudy go? 5th round?
Guys, for those of you who want to do a Cleveland deep dive, I did one last Monday where we ended up going Cleveland hard. You can get all my raw and unfiltered emotions of that. That was right after the Kenny trade became official.
Where did Jerry Jeudy go in this draft?
Good question, because I don't think he's on the board anymore.
Who? Yeah, Jerry Jeudy's up in 5th round or something like that. With George Pickens, right? Something like that. I want to say. Yeah, so he was taken in the 6th round. 6th round.
There you go.
On the yeah. Okay. So I mean, there's a lot of conversation that you can have about value. I think that when you look at this board and you see, okay, Russell Wilson going down here in the 17th round, maybe there's a little bit of beginning season value to Russell Wilson because he might not be a starter later on in the season. These running backs being drafted here, it's a veritable hodgepodge of, which rookie or which second guy you want to take a stab on.
And we're going to take our stab on Damian Martinez because he seems like the perfect chief.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. The fact that we have 4 rookie running backs is really gross. 5.
We're going to have 5 after we get Martinez.
That's disgusting. That is
all rookies, baby. We got a rookie roster. We got a rookie receiver.
This roster, thankfully, these drafts have like 4 teams getting in. This roster might have a hard time being competitive in the wide receiver market. We got boxed out of a couple of guys that we wanted pretty early. But we have
the point of today's episode was mostly for content more so than anything else. What happens if you predominantly box yourself into a division? And what we saw was a challenging build. But
I will say this. We got
some of the best studs from it.
It's possible, depending on how the rest of your league plays out. Like that guy selecting Cortland Sutton a little bit earlier than he should have. Usually you're not taking Cortland Sutton unless you're planning a Bo Nix stack, and he didn't take Bo Nix, which was a little bit weird. But I think that this would work, and I think that it will work with certain divisions. Like I said, I do think a lot of people are not buying into the NFC West this year. And for that purpose, the 49ers are coming value. Okay. The 49ers as a team of players minus George Kittle is coming off at a really good value if you can make it happen. In comparison to other teams that are in the league. I mean, we are talking about a team that also doesn't have a defense like the Cincinnati Bengals that are going to probably build up their offensive line a little bit. If they get that offensive line right, there's a chance that they're going to have a decent amount of opportunities, just like the Cincinnati Bengals. Maybe they're not throwing the ball 40 times, but maybe Brock Purdy has to throw the ball 35 times, 30 times, and then all of a sudden those wide receivers have a volume asset, right? It's the same conversation that we've said about guys like DJ Moore. DJ Moore last season was one of Joe's least favorite wide receivers from a fantasy perspective.
Sure was.
And a lot of the times he did not pay out value, right? Nope. Because Caleb was throwing the ball, but he was very inaccurate. Caleb Williams was a 62% completion percentage last year. So you look at it and you say to yourself, okay, do we have a chance? Family's calling for Chig soon.
Chig's who we're going to take, dude.
Still on the board.
We got Cam Ward. We'll be taking Chig.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens. That's what happens when you invest that high draft capital. I've been, I want to finish this thought first, though. This is also a team that you don't often see us doing Brock Bowers. So this is a very unique.
You never see this build.
This is a very unique episode that we're doing. Not unique to the whole fantasy circle, though, but a definitely unique build for us on the show. But talking.
Yeah, this is not a league that if it was not for the fact we were recording this, I would never do this draft. Let's be totally blunt.
So from the perspective that I was talking about, DJ Moore, for example, DJ Moore is going off in the 3rd round this year. And there's a conversation that you could want to have that Ben Johnson could help increase this completion percentage for Caleb Williams. If Caleb Williams ends up completing, I mean, he threw, I think, like 576 passes last year. He threw the 7th most passes in the league, but he was the 24th best completion percentage. That's not a good combination. You do not want that. But with that in tow, what you saw was DJ Moore had 140 targets, 98 catches, less than 1,000 yards. If Caleb Williams can make development in the offseason and get a little bit more accurate, Keenan Allen's gone. So if he ends up throwing 576 passes again and ups that completion percentage to, let's say, 68%, 68% maybe, 70% maybe, then those targets for DJ Moore go up to more than that, probably about 160.
You
I'm
are
just saying,
doing
Joe.
more wishing than the draft
Listen,
wishing Terrence was
I'm
going on
wish
a score.
casting. But what I'm saying is that when you're looking at these quarterback wide receiver combinations, right? And we look at certain combinations that we have in the past, DJ Moore is one of those players attached to a quarterback that is much maligned, in Caleb Williams, that does have a chance to be successful, but not often do people want to pair him with Caleb. And it's the same thing for a guy like, Cortland Sutton, is that Cortland Sutton is a fairly successful wide receiver in his career. And if you're not taking him with Bo Nix, then you have a lot of good things to say about Sutton, because most people don't have those same things to say about Sutton. So, I mean, would I sell Najee? Would you sell the Najee?
That's a good question. So my answer with it is I would not sell Najee, because you don't pay a receiver, you don't pay a running back and not use them. So I think that he's going to have a great start to the year, especially if they get a rookie who's not yet established in the system. Harbaugh is one of those guys that they have to know that they're going to give something before they play him. He's old school like that. So I think Najee at minimum is going to give you a good start. He could be a guy you move around Halloween at an inflated value. So I think that Najee's value is going to increase on the other side, because at that point it'll be beginning of the year. He'll have a higher average, and all that. So when you look at it's
there goes Gray. There goes Gray.
That's fine. It's $2 million guaranteed. It's a 9.5 if he clicks all of them. So Pollard sucked from the beginning, dude. And
he was actually pretty decent. He was actually pretty decent at the beginning of the year. I mean, he was actually only decent when they basically had a lead, though, because they stopped using him whenever they were down a decent amount.
Whoa, that got ugly fast.
Yeah, it did. I don't know why you took Mike Williams where you took him. You knew we needed a tight end. Now there's nobody left.
There's lots of guys still left here, Bob.
Who?
Including my boy Mostert.
God, take him.
All right, I'm doing it then.
Take him. I want you to do it. I want you to be gross.
I can't. I'm going to take Disley.
Why?
Because when Disley goes off, he goes off.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't.
Mostert.
You are killing me, man. Killing me. Killing me. The fact you took Mike Williams there, though, over the tight end, I mean, I don't agree with that statement. I mean, like, you could have took Trey Tucker. He has the correlation to the division as well. Mike Williams has the correlation to the division, but we needed a tight end. We don't have a second tight end.
Mike Williams does have the correlation to the division. And if you don't want me to go Disley, I'm going to go Stennett.
Sennett's worthless too. I mean, both of them are pretty worthless in terms of what the now value is. If you want Disley, take Disley. But
the problem with taking Myers is that we need a second one. This is only going to be our second tight end. So I think it's going to be Disley, and just hope they have different buys.
But again, Disley has no value, because when I look at Disley, he already has another guy with him, Stone Smart, probably cheaper salary from a Charger standpoint. They both aren't very good, so they're probably going to go out and draft.
This is like 4 weeks in the top 10 last year.
I'm just saying, from a competition standpoint, there is a reasonable argument that you can make that Disley's role on this team will be lessened in the coming year with the arrival of Najee Harris. I'm just saying, from a competition.
I'll give you that. But I also know that QJ and Williams get hurt all the damn time, and there will be at least 3 games.
Why'd you draft Williams? You didn't even draft QJ. You drafted Williams.
I know.
I just don't. I
think
don't.
Williams is taking that number 2 job, by the way, as the number 2 target getter.
Okay, I mean that it's fair for you to say that, but on a where we needed the tight end was really at that Mike Williams pick. I think that, you took Damian Martinez. That was not a pick that we needed.
That might have been a luxury, but at the end of the day, we've never really done the 9 receiver build, and we did that today.
was garbage. Garbage.
Well, at a certain point, you just started throwing volume at it.
But
Worthy, Golden, Ayuk, and Coleman and Brown.
But the
all these guys have potential to go off, but none of them have. We don't have a floor in our receiving room. We have a lot of they can go off.
The floor is zero. The floor is zero.
The floor is, but the ceiling is infinite.
The floor is zero. The limit does not exist, but it does.
But Ayuk and Worthy can each give you
50. It's also zero.
I don't like what we did here, Bob.
That's the argument to make, though. You're right. You're right, family. That's the argument to make, is that you only actually need Dissly one game.
That's right.
You're only buying him for
Brock
one
Bowers
game.
is out. This team lost anyway. You don't win when you're
Brock Bowers is out. You lost anyway. To your point here, Joe, in terms of half PPR scoring, Dissly had 3 top 10 finishes.
Well, there you go.
12 points, 16 points, 12 points.
I'll take that all day and a half PPR for my last round pick.
So, there's a little bit of, again, though, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what if he'll have a consistent role on this team, because when we started buying into Dissly last year, he started fading really, really fast. And I don't know if that was just a competition standpoint or something else. Yeah, Trey Tucker.
I don't believe in Trey Tucker. I know he exists as a person. I don't think he's going to give you any production. I think they're going to receiver him out, and he's just going to be a distant number 3 on a running team, because I think the Raiders are going to turn themselves into a running team.
But that could be the case. But when you look at our build specifically, we got Geno, you got Brock. Trey Tucker would have been an additional add to that offense that could have been really interesting, because Geno can sling it. He can throw the ball, and he does throw it fairly often. So I think he wasn't a player that we were actually
these vertical receivers later in the draft, and it'll be fine.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. A 3 to 4 week Bowers out would absolutely.
Listen, guys, we tried to do an AFC West build. We got 6 correct.
No, they know that. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows
AFC West in here.
But
this was not easy.
But what I want to say, though, about Brock Bowers.
Let me count these up again.
I want to say this about Brock Bowers as Joe finishes up this draft. He might already be finished.
Well, I am, yeah.
So I want to say this about Brock Bowers real quick. Joe, go to the top of the board. We always go through the board as it lies and what happens.
Yeah.
This is the danger of drafting Brock Bowers early, because there's a couple of notions going into this, right?
We did both things we hate. We took a tight end and a quarterback before the end of the 7th round.
Well, for this build, it works, but I want to say
this is a teaching lesson.
Yeah, just as insurance, the 3 tight ends at the end would have been really nice. But again, Brock Bowers. So the conversation to have about taking a tight end or a onesie position, specifically tight end, is really interesting to me. So the first notion is, if you invest 2nd round draft capital into Brock Bowers can potentially be an elite level talent, 20 plus points a week from a position that only averages, or that where a top 10 finish is 10 plus points.
Yeah.
So, you're looking at a 20 plus as being huge, like a Kelsey, Mark Andrews during their big prime years, huge. Then you look at it, and you say, okay, when you see a onesie position and you're taking them early, you're taking them at the expense of your other positions. And especially if you want to stack a quarterback in there. And I have seen teams do this where they go Brock Bowers, Jaden Daniels, or Brock Bowers, Lamar Jackson, Brock Bowers, Josh Allen. Then you're putting yourself at a little bit of a competitive disadvantage, and you have to make that up in the back end. But the point that Joe just made is absolutely true. And the point that
you don't want Ayuk as your 3rd receiver.
And the point that family brought up,
he wouldn't be.
The point that family brought up is that when you take a onesie position early, and and a lot of podcasters, a lot of YouTubers will say the same thing. When you take a onesie position early, You're basically betting that one position and that position is going to give you such a competitive advantage. They're going to score a lot of points. And if they were to lose anyway, you're kind of out of it. Especially when you take them so high, like if you were drafting Travis Kelce in the first round last year or a couple years ago, you were kind of screwed. If you're taking Mark Andrews in the second round, third round, as many people were, you were kind of screwed. So you look at it, injuries are injuries, but you want to play into the mindset that this guy's not going to get injured and he's going to have a fantastic season. So if you do play into that mindset, drafting a couple tight ends a little bit later, 15th, 14th, 15th round, somewhere in there, maybe take one or two more. And then you've got yourself covered by taking some tight ends on the back half. Now, I just want to touch on Mostert for a minute here.
I disagree when you say Mike Williams is never going to touch our lineup.
Before we get to
number 2 in Chargers.
Before we get to Mike Williams, when it comes to Mostert could end up not even playing. I mean, there's a likelihood that he might not even play. But when we talk about if everything hits a way that we want,
he's the backup for Genty, guys.
Ultimately, we want Genty to be successful anyway. So Mostert there over Trey Tucker. Maybe Trey Tucker would have been the better play. But again, if this team is going to win, we really do want those first 3 wide receivers to hit. The rest of that is kind of a dart throw. Where could that dart be put? Mike Williams is one of those guys that may have weeks that are 16 points. And will that be better than Ayuk? Maybe in a given week or not. Sure, that can happen. There's a sense of gamesmanship when it comes to the back end of the draft because
I like Ayuk a whole lot more than you do. I think Ayuk is a steal where we go.
I think that's first of all, I think that's funny. Absolutely, family. But I don't think he's that old. I actually don't think Mostert is that old. Joe, can you look up Mostert's age?
Pretty sure he's like 31. Let me pull this up.
I don't know. I thought he was 30, which is old for a running back. Not as old as me, but old for a running back.
He's 32.
32. All right. So he is old. He is way older than I thought. I could make an argument for Mayer in the last round.
You couldn't on this build because I would be guaranteed not to have a tight end on the bye week.
Yeah. In this build, absolutely. It would be problematic. If you're building Bowers, you're most likely not building Mayer because you don't want to draft.
I think you should build Mayer if you're building Bowers in general. I'm not opposed to it. But that's the only time I'd want it. To go off of all of the injury risk Bob just said, Myers would negate it with a basic insurance policy.
Yeah, Mayer. I think that if I were taking Brock Bowers and Mayer,
that's right.
I think the tight end that I'd want to probably end up with would be like a Chig or maybe a Jawan Johnson, something like that, where I'm taking, particularly though, more so to think about if you're taking Bowers and Mayer as an insurance policy for Bowers, and you want to have like a guarantee. Okay, I need a starter on the bye week for the Raiders. What I would be looking up is teams that use their tight end sparingly, but in the red zone. So,
which is most of them, quite frankly.
So thinking about like, okay, well, this guy's not going to be volume because if he was volume, he would have been drafted 7 rounds ago. But if he's sparingly used, but has utilization in the red zone, and he could squeak me out 6 points, 2 catch or a touchdown for 6 points, 20 yards and 2 catches, I'd be okay with something like that. And most tight ends that aren't a volume-based tight end are probably going to have weird stat lines like that most games. But one thing that I don't want to do, this is fine. I think something like this would have been fine. One thing that I don't want to do, Joe, and I want everybody to take a look at this just from a statistical standpoint here. Team number 1, while their player capital and all that stuff, while they're investing in all these really talented players,
it's a disaster.
There's a big mistake that happens here. And it's one that we showed you last year. It's one that we showed you if you were going to do it, it really, really, really destroys your team. You're taking 2 onesies from the same position. Now,
they have to. If Laporta's not your flex, you lost.
In a universe where you do this, you are saying to yourself, Laporta and Kittle are always going to hit my lineup. Laporta and Kittle, one of them is going to be my flex. But when you look at this onesie position and you look at what the average tight end scores, and we did this exercise probably about 5 weeks ago now, I think, right before the NFL Combine. And we said, what value is the number 1 tight end going to give you versus the number 10 tight end? And there are weeks where the number 1 tight end eclipses 20 points, right? And if that was the case, you wanted to have that tight end. But most of the time,
it's National Tight End Day. That's when they do it. They all do it.
Most of the time, most tight ends pocket themselves in between like 9 to 17 points, right?
More specific, 9. If you're talking about the median, is almost there. So basically, what Bob's giving you a lot of math, but the boil out fact is that you, by trying to force a tight end into your flex position, have shaved off at minimum 8 points on your average weekly production. And it's hard to overcome when you're handicapping yourself 8 points before the injuries of the league even kick in.
Exactly. That's why if you're going to do a double onesie, you might as well just go quarterback and wide receiver, because the value at the quarterback position is so much higher. You know, like not Matt Stafford early, but like let's say you wanted to make a build that was Nico.
Say the guy did Allen and Lamar together, and then you never draft another quarterback. Okay. But the 2 tight ends early thing, now, Grant, you don't need to be as extreme as I did it, which is second round and then not until the last 2. But that is how you recover from that fact.
But here's the problem with this, family. I get what your viewpoint is on this. But again, what we've established on a week-to-week basis, and we've talked about this many, many times, is that a top 10 tight end performance most weeks means that you are just above 10 points. Especially,
so it's not that huge.
Especially
so wasting those extra picks to not be in the bottom is not as productive.
So the premium that you're paying, if you wanted to do this, then do it with Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. If you're going to go whole out with a crazy double tight end strategy, you might as well go out with the 2 tight ends that get the most volume on their teams and that are essentially in the position of a number 1 wide receiver, even though Marvin Harrison is their number 1 wide receiver in Arizona. George Kittle has a lot of competition for targets. Sam Laporta has a lot of competition for targets. So it's not guaranteed where George Kittle's value is at is in the touchdown market.
And if you just end on this before we got to go here. If you look at the top 6 receivers that get taken.
Okay. I got you, family. I got you.
Yeah, we got you. So
3 guys in the
Warren, Hawk, Laporta, Kittle, McBride, and Bowers. Only 2 of those 6 have no competition and are clearly either the 1 or 2 target on their team, and that is Warren and that is Bowers.
Yeah, I got you on that. I got you.
So,
I mean,
that being said, guys,
hold on before you go. Like that, this makes sense too. Like if you want to do like a Brock, and then you come down and you get yourself TJ Hawkinson down there. As long as you haven't built a quarterback already, that's probably fine to do too.
Yeah, quite frankly, without going in depth, the one who has Warren probably has the best roster. I mean, so we'll go, and that's just going off of the Kellers, not going off of the
That's Chase Brown up there. You hate Chase Brown.
I do hate Chase Brown. I was strictly going off the
T. Higgins as a number 1 wide receiver too. There's no way that guy has the best team for you. No way.
Again, going off the Kellers, you pick the names right. But guys, the cruise will be happening. We're about to answer this. Make sure you click on it through the link in our video. Give us a little extra juice, guys. But we want to see you guys on board with us. Drink with us, have some beers with us, and do some drafts. We'll see you guys
Next
on
Monday, 3:45 Eastern Standard Time.
Fantasy football fans unite. On July 29th, we're going to be hosting a fantasy football cruise. There's going to be an array of fantasy experts discussing every team in the NFL. Who are their favorite players? Who's the best sleepers? Who are the landmines? A best ball draft so you can dominate your league. This is going to take place on the Margaritaville Islander at Sea, where you and your +1 are going to get all of these benefits. A stateroom with a balcony, the all-you-can-eat food package, the premium deluxe beverage package, the best entertainment on board, en route to two of the prettiest beaches in the world at Key West, Florida and Cozumel, Mexico. Surrounded by fun and getting this world-class fantasy football experience, we can't wait to see you July 29th on this elite business cruise.